Welcome back to the Sports Business Leaders Podcast. Today we're joined by Jes Wolfe. Thanks for joining the show, Jes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really excited to dive in and learn more about your career, Jes. We were introduced by Mike Schreiber, who's the CEO of Playfly Sports, and he was a former podcast guest. But for everybody listening, Jes Wolfe is the co-founder and chairwoman of League One Volleyball San Fran and the CEO and chairwoman of Rebel Girls. League One Volleyball San Fran is also a new professional women's volleyball team coming to San Fran in January of 2027, which is not too far away from now, recording this in May 2026. But Rebel Girls is a global multi-platform empowerment brand focused on a mission to help raise the most inspired and confident generation of girls through content, products, and experience and community. Under Jes's leadership, Rebel Girls has grown into a global brand, reaching 50 million girls across 100 countries with over 13 million books sold, 30 million podcast downloads, and 75 million YouTube views. Beyond League One Volleyball San Fran and Rebel Girls, Jes is also an active angel investor and advisor focused on female-founded companies with investments spanning media, consumer, health, and sports. So again, Jes, welcome to the show. I know we said a lot about you, but would love to hear more about your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. Well, grew up in Oregon on a farm and wanted to see the world. So I actually spent my first 10, 11 years as a banker, as an investor, as a consultant, working, advising companies from tiny to massive all over the world, and just learning as much as I possibly could about business, about situations, about all the things. And then, in 2015, decided it was time to become an entrepreneur. And I love building, and I'm a builder at heart, and I think I'll do this forever as a serial entrepreneur, and built my first company called Hoodline, which was a media tech company. And second company is Rebel Girls, and third company is Love San Francisco.
That's exciting, Jes, and I love just the fact that you have that corporate experience and then you've used a lot of those experiences to help build what you're working on in the entrepreneurial space now. Could you talk in more detail about some of the experiences that have helped shape the way you think about building businesses and brands today?
Yeah. So I always look at the market as a really big one, and what are the needs? So businesses need to solve a problem, right? And fundamentally, for a business to be successful, it needs to solve a problem. And ideally, the bigger the problem or the more painful the problem for humans, the more successful a business will be. So I like to look at the market and see kind of what the potential size of the market is, how many people are impacted by said problem, where is the white space, right? And what are the fundamentals of that industry? And is there basically like a big enough market with a big enough white space with fundamentals that work? And there's the opportunity to have a business. And so, the newest one, League One Volleyball, market is massive. Volleyball is the number one girls participation sport in the country. More girls play volleyball than boys who play football in Texas, right? There's 46 million Americans who play or played volleyball. So the market's really, really big. And then we look at like the opportunity in the white space. Traditionally, there haven't been professional volleyball leagues in the US. We have huge club participation, massive NCAA participation. We win Olympics, like medals at every Olympics, right? But we haven't had professional volleyball in this country. There's 48 professional leagues outside of this country. So our women have had to go overseas. So the white space of creating professional volleyball in the United States is massive. And in San Francisco, super massive, where we don't have a team and we have a huge appetite for women's sports. And so there's really big opportunity of white space. And then the fundamentals of it. Can you make money? Can you be commercially viable? Because the more commercially viable you are, the more you can keep going and expand. And, we really look at the Valkyries here, who've just done the most amazing job, and seeing them, be worth $1 billion in their second year, leading in revenue, leading in impact, leading in fandom, leading in culture, leading in community building. And we really think that there's an opportunity here to do that in volleyball.
Yeah, it's so exciting, Jes. And I did not realize that one stat you pointed out, that there was 46 million women who play volleyball. And was that in the United States alone?
In the United States, 46 million Americans play or played
Wow.
volleyball.
Wow.
900 million globally.
And that really is the definition of white space. As we talked about off air, Jes, just within sports business leaders, our community consists of entrepreneurs and investors. So I'm just curious from a practical standpoint, when you really identify what is a problem, and I love the way that you articulated that, can you maybe walk through some of the mental frameworks that you really try to think about, like you talked about, is this a really commercially viable product or service to get involved with?
Yeah. So in the volleyball example, for instance, so the first is like how many people care about this thing, right? And so, San Francisco is the third largest volleyball market in terms of participation in the country. And that's youth and that's also grown-ups. So there's a bunch of people who care and don't have a place to go and create fandom and see it at the very, very, very highest levels. These people who play want to go see Olympians play. Like that is so inspiring. And there's also, when I think about the calendar of it, right now the WNBA plays kind of May to September, and the NWSL kind of end of March to November. But there isn't really anything in that winter season for sports fans. And the volleyball season is kind of December through April. So we're also creating a 365 calendar. So when I think about, hey, I'm a sports fan, and especially a women's sports fan in the Bay Area, I can go see soccer, I can go see basketball, but there's about 4 months of the year where I can't go see it. There's nothing to go see, right? Volleyball fills that gap. And so that's what we're trying to figure out, which is how do we give volleyball players the best volleyball in the world to watch? How do we give women's sports fans women's sports to watch when the W and the NWSL are not playing? And how can we make sure that our offer is complementary and additive and unique and different?
Yeah. And that's something that we hear about all the time from successful founders and entrepreneurs like yourself, that when you can find a way to create a win-win scenario and something that's complementary to the broader ecosystem, that's really when you create value. And I don't know a lot of the exact stats, but women's sports in the United States especially is booming, and you're in the perfect market with the Valkyries being there. And just like you mentioned, it was announced that they were valued at over $1 billion in their second year. So I think, just like you talked about, there's ways to enhance what people are the trends in the broader ecosystem. And you've done an amazing job with that. And I think League One Volleyball is going to only continue to grow.
Thank you. We're excited.
Yeah. So going more so to talk about the Rebel Girls side of your career. Rebel Girls started as a publishing success story and then evolved into a global brand with books, audio experiences, and a massive community. So what were some of the key decisions that
Help transform Rebel Girls from
a product into a broader platform and a movement?
So Rebel Girls started 10 years ago as a Kickstarter for a book. And the premise was simple. Only 19% of children's books have female characters with agency. So that's a job or even career ambition. And the traditional fairy tale and bedtime story was once upon a time, there was a princess and she needed to be rescued by a prince. And so the initial idea was, hey, we need our fairy tales and our bedtime stories to our children. And we need to showcase more women, real life women with all the agency in the world. So that first book, Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, told the stories of 100 women from Cleopatra to Serena Williams, RBG, Amelia Earhart, that had all the agency in the world. And told their stories as fairy tales about how they did the thing and changed the world and were incredible. And that really took off. And the idea was, okay, girls, and quite honestly, boys too, need more content that role models strong women, smart women, creative women, tenacious women. And how do we reach them everywhere they are? So we started in books and publishing and wanted to tell more and more stories and found a lot of global distribution doing that. And then it was always the question of where else can we reach girls and be authentic and be meaningful. So the next thing we did was we entered podcasting. And the idea was, what are families doing when they're in the car? Or if they're too tired to read at night, how do we reach them there? We've then, built an app to do that and to be able to do it, on an airplane or sometime when you're, off internet. And so then we went into video because girls are on YouTube and they want something there. And we went into consumer products and into live events. And the idea was build omni-channel, always with this mission. How do we inspire girls? How do we instill confidence in girls? How do we help them on their journey to becoming the most amazing humans they possibly can? And in the most authentic and representative way possible? And how do we build out the channels to do so that whether they're on the soccer pitch or at school or at home or with their friends, we have something there to support them and entertain them and inspire them.
That's so exciting. And how did you come up with the idea?
So two amazing women from Italy were authors. They came up with the idea and they wrote that first book and put it on Kickstarter. And I had moved to Tahoe after selling my previous company and was hosting founders. And we do 3-day like ski strategy camp. And it was a way for me to meet a bunch of really interesting people who are doing things with impact. And so I got introduced to one of the original authors, and she came to Tahoe. And after 3 days of hearing about it and this book and just falling in love with this concept, I was like, let's turn this into something much bigger. Let's set a big audacious goal. Let's build around this idea. So that's how that started.
Yeah, that's so cool. And just another takeaway from what you described there is just that going back to what I mentioned earlier, just understanding what's happening at a macro level across different industries, I think is something that you've successfully done. And that's another great example of that, is just understanding where is the white space, what are people looking for? And when you really identify something that you're passionate about, it's something that you can run with. And I think that you've done an amazing job with that. And so just thinking about, I know we've talked a lot about your career history, but thinking about the future now from your perspective, more so on the women's sports side of things. I know we've talked about League One Volleyball, San Fran, but would love to hear more about what you think about the future of women's sports and what some of the biggest opportunities are over the next maybe 5 to 10 years.
So women's sports is just starting on the J curve of growth. Right? 2021, 500 million revenue, whole space. This year it's projected to be 3 billion, which is a 6x, multiple, but still there is 60x more, to go. There's so much more to go. So I think there's incredible opportunity. To me, infrastructure needs to be built, and that's at all levels. So physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure, fan infrastructure. Also, women's sports fans are different than men's sports fans, and they want a different product, and therefore we need to serve them differently. So I take, everything from the commerce, right, and what we sell them. Women's sports fans don't necessarily want a jersey. They want cuter clothing. They want more fashion forward. They want accessories. They want different things, right? A lot of them are watched differently, right? And so we're, Rebel Girls, we're very focused on the next gen fan of women's sports, of that younger sports fan. And we just see so much opportunity across content, commerce, and community for that piece of it. And if I could explain a little more, if you think about men's sports, our professional men's leagues are between 90 and 150 years old. So kids become sports fans by age 14, and it's because their parents indoctrinate them into whatever team they were indoctrinated into. So for men's teams, that fandom is inherited. For women's teams that are 0 years old, they don't come with that multi-generational fan base. They have to build it. And for me, it's like, how do you build for that next generation to become a lifetime fan, to then indoctrinate their children, etc.? Well, you need different content, because no one under 18 is watching broadcast anything. So what is the content? Where is it? And how is it different? They're not wanting to watch a 3-hour match. They're wanting highlights. They're wanting the fashion. They're wanting the behind the scenes. They're wanting to understand the athlete, right? It's YouTube first. How are you contextualizing it? What is the content strategy for serving a younger fan? And then if you go to a game, what is the experience that's built for that younger fan? How do you make it be her favorite day ever? Like, what is that experience there that really says, hey, we understand what you want and have something purpose built for you. And then what are you selling her? She probably wants a sparkle hat and a bag charm and just different ways of expressing fandom. And so I think as we, globally are building the women's sports ecosystem, there's so many opportunities to build differently and intentionally for different audiences. And there will be massive opportunities across the board for entrepreneurs to do that.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there, Jess, and appreciate you sharing all those different trends and ways of understanding your target market. And that actually just takes me back to something we were talking about recently on another podcast, which is understanding not only the demographics of the fans, but also how they consume content. And I think that's something that's really important to realize is that people, especially Gen Z and below, are only watching the highlights and the short form content and aren't going to sit through a 2 or 3 hour game from start to finish for the most part. And then another interesting thing that I've recently experienced is with Unrivaled Basketball. They recently came to Philly, and how they have the winning score at the end instead of just the traditional ending. You have to, I can't remember the exact details, but you have to win by a certain number. So those unique ways of engaging fans that are different and valuable, I think, just like you mentioned, are going to be the future. And appreciate you mentioning some really great topics there.
And the experience too. I mean, Unrivaled Basketball, that you go to the game because of the experience of it, right? I was just at the Valkyries game last night. The experience of going to a Valkyries game is very, very different than the experience of going to an NBA game. The rituals, the dancing, the lights, the way, the different pieces of it, the chants, the community aspects, the even, showcasing, like one of our players, inaugural players, Mo Billings, like went to the Fever and they played the Fever last night. And it was a welcome back to Valhalla and a, hey, we love you. You played for us. Like you're part of our history. Even that piece of acknowledgement and community building and whatnot is so unique in women's sports and building a very different audience and different audience experience. And I think it's critical.
Yeah. I appreciate the way that you shared that. And I think it's, as you mentioned, very critical. And just to think, I know we talked about a lot about women's sports here, but just thinking about entrepreneurship within sports as a whole, when thinking about advice for entrepreneurs, what would you tell them about going from 0 to 1 since you've been doing this with League One Volleyball San Fran?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs in sports kind of writ large. We're in a time when technology is progressing incredibly quickly. And if you think about a lot of the processes in sports that are legacy. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities to disrupt and to use technology, to use creativity in very different ways. And so I'd say for entrepreneurs, let's like find the problem you want to solve, right? And then when you go from 0 to 1, it's really about getting as much consumer or customer input as possible. Right. So whether it's a B2C or a B2B company, know who your customer is and talk to them as much as you can and collect as much data as you possibly can and be as smart as you possibly can when you're building initially, because you've got to find that first customer or that first, consumer that falls in love with it. And you're only going to do that with rapid iteration and data. So even like our naming of Love San Francisco, part of it was we did this broad, appeal to everyone of like, help us find our name. And one of the things we were looking for was, should it be San Francisco or should it be Bay Area, right? And how many people submitted names that said San Francisco and how many people submitted names that said Bay Area? And that was like data points that we were looking for of like, what is our target consumers' identity and what they want and how they affiliate. So I can't recommend enough when you're going 0 to 1 to figure out how to get as much data as you can from your target audience.
And what I found is that the people that are really successful and have progressed the fastest, especially in the earlier days, really are meticulous about the way they ask questions too. And that's something that I've found to be very valuable is you don't necessarily want to ask the question like, oh, do you like this idea? It's more about just understanding what they're already doing and their process and the problem more than your product. So I just wanted to point that out there. And if you had any additional thoughts there, that'd be amazing too.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, Jes, this has been great. Really appreciate you sharing all your advice here today and just telling us more about League One Volleyball San Francisco. Any last words you'd like to share with our sports business leaders audience today?
It's a really exciting time to be in sports. I think there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of moments for us to rethink, and build new and different and creatively and super serve sports teams, leagues, fandom, audiences, humans. So there's plenty of opportunity and we need more entrepreneurs and we need to build the future of sports.
Couldn't agree more. And what's the best way for everybody to stay in touch with you and League One Volleyball San Fran?
Yeah, so LOVBSF.com, or you can go to our social medias and same rebelgirls.com or our Rebel Girls social media.
All right, Jes, thank you again for joining the show. Excited to keep in touch and congratulations on everything.